8:45. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Here is the news, edited by Danushka Madhawala and read by Indrani Senanayaka. The headlines. The President, issuing a message regarding the Israeli crisis, says that Sri Lankans must help the Israelis living in Sri Lanka to travel back to Israel. The high-speed passenger ferry between Sri Lanka and India is scheduled to commence operations tomorrow. The Sri Lankan aviation sector has reported a profit of 22 billion rupees during the initial 8 months of this year. The Education Minister says that primary classes are expected to continue in January next year despite the scheduled GCE advanced level examination. The funeral of veteran Sri Lankan actor Jackson Anthony will be held this week. In foreign news, Israel orders complete siege of Gaza as rocket attacks continue. And in sports news, Kelvin Kiptum shatters world marathon record in Chicago. President Ranil Wickremesinghe, issuing a message regarding the Israeli crisis, says there are many Sri Lankans working in Israel. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs must locate them and ensure their safety. There are a number of Israelis in Sri Lanka. Some are tourists and some are employed. We must help them to travel back to Israel. The President said that he has also asked the police to look after the Israelis here. Sri Lanka has always supported the two states concept of Israel and Palestine. We are steadfast in our support. At times we have condemned Israel's actions. Nevertheless, all this does not justify the Hamas attack on Israel, killing a large number of civilians. The government of Sri Lanka condemns this unprecedented attack. The fighting and violence must be brought to an end immediately. Sri Lanka is in agreement with the African Union proposal. There is another impact of this crisis. The petrol prices were expected to rise to $100 per barrel and thereafter recede from end February. This crisis will only create a further shortage of fuel, ensuring that fuel prices will remain high for a longer period of time. The President in his message says that this is a big blow to the developing economies. The high-speed passenger ferry between Sri Lanka and India is scheduled to commence operations tomorrow. The ferry service will operate from Nagapattinam in Tamil Nadu, India, to the Kankesanthore port in the northern province of Sri Lanka. Indian media reported in September that the passenger terminal was being set up at the Nagapattinam port and that the work was scheduled to be completed ahead of the commencement of the ferry service. The route would cover a distance of 60 nautical miles and the ferry would have at least 150 passengers, with the journey taking around 2 to 3 hours. The operations would be initiated by the Shipping Corporation of India and controlled by the Central Industrial Security Force. Minister of Port, Shipping and Aviation, Mr. Nimal Siripala de Silva, said that in a significant development, Sri Lanka's aviation sector has reported a substantial profit of 22 billion rupees in the period spanning from January to August 2023. He made this remark during a news briefing held at the President's Media Centre today, focusing on the theme, Collective Path to a Stable Country. The minister highlighted that approximately 10 billion rupees from this profit had also been contributed to the Treasury, providing a much-needed boost to the country's finances. He further said that efforts are underway to restructure Sri Lankan Airlines, the national carrier, with a focus on improving its operations and financial performance. Importantly, the government is committed to ensuring the job security of the approximately 6,000 employees of the airline during this restructuring process. To facilitate this, an international consultant has been appointed. This consultant is expected to bring expertise and best practice to guide the restructuring efforts. This news comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.
People's Bank Excelsior. Live the life you want.
We continue with local news. Education Minister Susil Premajayantha said primary classes are expected to continue in January next year despite the scheduled GCE advanced level examination. Addressing an event in the ministry recently, he said that during next year, all the missed subjects will be completed and the vacation period will be reduced accordingly. He also said that due to the increase in the country's elderly population, relative to the young population, more burdens will be added to the country. In order to overcome all these problems, there should be good administrative management that includes proper economics and policies. The funeral of veteran Sri Lankan actor Jackson Anthony, who passed away this morning, will be held this week. Family sources say that the body of the late actor will be placed at the Jayaratna Respect Home Funeral Parlour in Colombo from 7:30 a.m. to 11 p.m. tomorrow and will be open to the public to pay their respects. The body of the actor will be placed at his residence in Kadawatha on Wednesday and Thursday. The final rites of veteran Sri Lankan actor Jackson Anthony will be performed on Thursday at St. Peter and Paul's Church in Ragama at 3 p.m. Jackson Anthony passed away at the National Hospital in Colombo this morning. He was 65 at the time of his demise. Jackson Anthony is one of the most popular artists in Sri Lanka and has won the National Award for Best Actor for a record 16 times. He was also well known for his immense talent and versatility as a director, producer, singer, screenwriter, television host, novelist, columnist, lyricist, historian and traveller. That ends the local segment of news.
People's Bank Excelsior, a comprehensive banking services package with a branded checkbook as well as debit and credit card exclusively for you. People's Bank Excelsior, for professionals who dare to dream.
The main news story is brought to you by Sinhala Mahatmya.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe has initiated the appointment of a board of directors for the Sri Lanka Personal Data Protection Authority, established with the primary objective of safeguarding personal data within the nation. In a significant milestone for data protection in South Asia, Sri Lanka's Personal Data Protection Act No. 9 of 2022 has been making strides toward full implementation. The Act, certified by the Speaker on March 19, 2022, aims to safeguard personal data held by various entities including government bodies, banks, telecom operators and hospitals. This legislation, the first of its kind in South Asia, was developed through a transparent process with draft versions made available for public comment since June 2019.
The main news story was brought to you by Sinhala Mahatmya.
We now take a look at Watchlight. In accordance with President's directives, the Secretary to the President has instructed the Secretary of the Ministry of Transport and Highways to take immediate measures to construct a temporary access way to the Bambalapitiya railway station. The temporary access way is to be constructed within 10 days to facilitate passenger entry into the railway station. Emphasizing its urgent necessity, plans are underway to demolish the existing dilapidated flyover and complete the new flyover within 5 months. And now we take a look at world news. First, the headlines. Israel orders complete siege of Gaza as rocket attacks continue. More than 1,000 dead in Afghanistan earthquake as villagers dig for survivors. Minister raised concerns over closure of SAS war crimes investigation. Israel's defense minister orders a complete siege of the Gaza Strip and the cutting off of food, fuel, electricity and water supplies. It comes 2 days after shock attacks by Israel by Hamas militants left hundreds of civilians dead. 9 U.S. citizens are now confirmed dead, while more than 10 British citizens are feared dead or missing. Rocket attacks from Gaza targeting Israel continue, with explosions heard in Jerusalem. Israel says it has regained control of its communities near Gaza, but some militants remain active. More than 700 people have been killed in Israel since Saturday, including 260 people massacred by Hamas gunmen at a music festival. Dozens of people were also kidnapped, and Hamas claims 4 of the hostages were killed by airstrikes in Gaza. More than 500 people have died in Gaza since Israel began striking the area. Rescuers are digging for survivors of a powerful earthquake that flattened whole villages in Afghanistan, killing more than 1,000 people. The 6.3 magnitude quake struck Saturday morning in Herat province, a barren landscape dotted with mud brick homes. Villagers are still using shovels and bare hands to search for missing people. More than 500 people, the UN says. Aid delayed by blocked routes and communication lines being down only started to trickle in today. The quake hit Zindijan, a rural district some 25 miles from Herat city, where 100% of homes are estimated to have been completely destroyed, according to the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. Veterans Minister Johnny Mercer raised serious concerns in government in 2019 over the decision to close an investigation into UK Special Forces. The BBC reports that Mr Mercer wrote to then Defence Secretary Ben Wallace to warn against the closure. The Veterans Minister, a former British Army officer, was privately concerned that there were credible war crimes allegations against British forces. When the closure was later announced, Mr Mercer publicly backed the decision. The investigation, known as Operation Northmoor, had set out in 2014 to investigate a total of 675 allegations of wrongdoing by UK armed forces in Afghanistan. They include allegations that the nation's elite Special Forces Regiment, the SAS, had murdered dozens of unarmed men, detainees and civilians during raids. But Operation Northmoor, which was being conducted by the Royal Military Police, was shut down in 2019 with no charges. To end this bulletin of world news, headlines again. Israel orders complete siege of Gaza as rocket attacks continue. More than 1,000 dead in Afghanistan earthquake as villagers dig for survivors. Minister raised concerns over closure of SAS war crimes investigation. That ends this bulletin of world news.
Development news.
A process has been started to release single superphosphate or SSP fertilizer in the country as a substitute for triple superphosphate fertilizer or mud fertilizer, which is used to provide phosphorus required for paddy cultivation and other crop cultivation. The single phosphate produced using Appabella rock phosphate is very suitable for paddy and other crops and can be used as a substitute for the triple superphosphate fertilizer or TSP, which is currently imported from foreign countries. The annual cost of importing TSP fertilizer to Sri Lanka is about 3 billion rupees. Most of these fertilizers are produced in the countries under the Russian Federation, and due to the current war between Ukraine and Russia, there are problems in importing TSP. Therefore, by producing this single superphosphate in the country will be able to save 3 billion rupees. Kenyan Kelvin Kiptum shattered the men's marathon world record in Chicago as he beat compatriot Eliud Kipchoge's previous mark by more than 30 seconds. The 23-year-old finished in a time of 2 hours 35 seconds. Dutch runner Sifan Hassan set the second fastest women's time in marathon history as she won the female event. Her time of 2:13:44 is behind only the record of 2:11:53 set by Ethiopia's Tigst Asef in Berlin last month. That was sports news.
Go ekathiana youth ekat life eke change ekat niyameta set wenna as wahagena dagapu gina habe karanna youth ekat niyameta set wenna friendship eka menna.
The all-new NSB Ithru account, NSB I Am, a plan for your dream.
Business News. Sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
The Minister of Agriculture, Mahinda Amarweera, has requested the South Korean ambassador to Sri Lanka to restart the program of providing training courses for officers and scientists in the agriculture sector in Sri Lanka under the Korean International Cooperation Agency. The South Korean ambassador to Sri Lanka recently met with the Minister of Agriculture and the officials of the Ministry of Agriculture and discussed the future development of the country's agriculture. In particular, the minister discussed a number of issues related to agriculture and training for officials in the agricultural sector in South Korea and Sri Lanka.
Business News. Sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Go ekak thiyana youth eකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න ඇස් වහගෙන දැකපු හින හැබැ කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න friendship එක මෙන්න
The all-new NSB Ithru account, NSB I Am, a plan for your dream.
Oil prices have jumped on concerns that the situation in Israel and Gaza could disrupt output from the Middle East. Brent crude, the international benchmark, climbed by $2.25 a barrel to $86.83, while US prices also rose. Israel and Palestinian territories are not oil producers, but the Middle Eastern region accounts for almost a third of global supply. Hamas' assault on Israel was the biggest escalation between the two sides for decades. The Western nations condemned the attacks. A spokesperson for Hamas, the Palestinian military group, told the group that had direct backing for the move from Iran, one of the world's largest oil producers. Iran denied involvement in the assault at a UN Security Council meeting in New York on Sunday, Reuters reported, but Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi has expressed support for the attack.
Weather report.
And finally, we take a look at the weather report. Showers of thunder occur over most places of the country during the evening or at night. Fairly heavy showers of above 75 millimeters can be expected at some places in the northern, north central and northeastern provinces and in the Matale district. Showers may occur in coastal areas of the southern provinces during the morning hours. To end tonight's news broadcast, we take a look at the headlines again. The President, issuing a message regarding the Israeli crisis, says that Sri Lankans must help the Israelis in Sri Lanka to travel back to Israel. The high-speed passenger ferry between Sri Lanka and India is scheduled to commence operations tomorrow. The Sri Lankan aviation sector has reported a profit of 22 billion rupees during the initial 8 months of this year. The Education Minister says that primary classes are expected to continue in January next year, despite the scheduled GCE advanced level examination. The funeral of veteran Sri Lankan actor Jackson Anthony will be held this week. In foreign news, Israel orders complete siege of Gaza as rocket attacks continue. In sports news, Kelvin Kiptum shatters world marathon record in Chicago. That ends tonight's news broadcast. The time reads 4 minutes past 9 o'clock. This is Radio Sri Lanka.